Please make some noise for Adam Conover.
Hello, everybody. Oh, my God. Hi, folks. How we doing? Give it up. Come on. Wonderful to be here. They gave me some remarks as a starting point. I'm not going to use them. I'm just going to ramble a little bit. I apologize for my speaking voice. I'm getting over a little bit of an illness. I did test myself. It's not COVID, so I did feel free to infect everybody in the green room with a mild cold. Look forward to that over the next couple days. So look, the topic of these upcoming panels are consumption and how media can affect consumption. We all know that, we live in a capitalist society that constantly wants us to buy more, consume more, produce more, waste more. That's a major driver of climate change and all sorts of pollution. What can media do about this? That's the question of the day. I'd like to start out by proposing, what if the answer is fucking nothing? Genuinely, I've spent my entire life being told by the media about how big of a problem, the environment and climate is. I grew up as part of the Captain Planet generation. We got Captain Planet people. Remember Captain Planet? Yeah, we're the Planeteers. You can be one too, because saving our planet is the thing to do, right? Oh, we all loved it. We all loved that show. Everybody watched it. That was, 30 years ago? Didn't fucking work. None of us joined the Planeteers, right? The pollution just got worse and worse. Turns out looting and polluting was the way, despite what Captain Planet had to say. And now part of that could be because why was that show on the air? Well, it wasn't because of the 19 minutes or so of educational content. It was because of the 11 minutes of ads for plastic toys that are now all rotting in landfills. That was the purpose of Captain Planet. It also might have been because the vision of what was causing pollution in Captain Planet was that there were supervillains out there who, for instance, one supervillain on Captain Planet was a literal pig man who built a giant smog machine, and he would walk around going, "Smog, beautiful smog." That was what we thought was causing climate change in the early 90s. It didn't talk about how we constructed a capitalist system that we're all a part of and participate in every day, and that's all of our faults, right? That was not the message that was told to us, so we didn't get it. We just said, oh, if we stop the pig man, then maybe things will get better, right? But, that was early days, right? Maybe there's been better media since then. I've tried to make some of that media myself, I did a show called Adam Ruins Everything for a number of years. Sure, thank you very much. You cannot watch it anywhere. They took it off of Max. No, it's all right. You can buy it on iTunes probably. Does that still exist? That's a different panel. So we did an episode on that show around 2017 or so called Adam Ruins Going Green, and we tried to get some of this messaging across, We talked about how, for instance, capitalism's always trying to sell you a better solution to fight climate change, and now they're trying to sell us electric cars, and so we did a nice little segment about how purchasing a new electric car can actually be worse for the planet than continuing to drive a hybrid or an efficient gas car, because if you buy a new electric car every 3 years, an immense amount of resources goes into building that car, and really what we need to do is buy less. And I was proud of that show, despite the fact that it really existed in order to sell ads, right, for more cars in between. But I was like, okay, we're getting some good messaging across. I was invited that year because that episode won an Environmental Media Award. I got to go to the Environmental Media Awards, which was really cool. Ed Begley Jr. shook my hand. It was amazing. I had a great time. Bill Nye was there. He just shows up when there's a step and repeat. There's Bill. Is he getting an award? No, he's just here, man. Wow, that's great. It was nice. But then as I was sitting there, I realized that the event was sponsored by a boxed water company. And one of the actors who was emceeing the event was actually a co-owner of the boxed water company. And he gave a whole speech about how great the boxed water company was for the planet. And I'm sitting there going, well, the problem with bottled water wasn't the bottle. I mean, it's part of the problem. It's a smaller part of the problem. The problem with bottled water is you're transporting water via truck, right? You're using fossil fuels to transport a liquid that we can get via pipes. And, you know, the pipes aren't sponsoring the Environmental Media Awards, right? And I've seen a lot of bottles of, you know, aluminum water, or I guess that's the new boxed water. I've seen that in the green room around. You know, it makes you realize that, like, capitalism always just wants to sell you something that's a little bit better. It's just like when they try to, you know, they slap gluten-free on a chocolate bar, right? Like, whatever the fad is, they'll tell you, yeah, we got a version of that's a little bit greener if you want to buy it. Doesn't mean the problem's solved. They've just given you something with a new label to buy. And those of us working in media, that's a challenge for us because we work in capitalist media, unless we work for NPR or PBS, which won't exist by next Wednesday. So we all work in capitalist media no matter what message we want to get across. And that means we fundamentally work for a system that is designed to get people to buy more things, whether or not we are up there saying with our mouths, don't buy so much shit, you know? And that is a challenge for all of us. And that might have something to do with the fact, you know, that we've been saying these messages for 30, 40 years now. And the problem has not gotten any better. We're still consuming more shit than ever. The planet is getting hotter and nothing is being done. And so I think that is the question that we're going to try to answer on the panel today. I think we have to put it that specifically and that difficult in order to see if it can be answered. Can media actually have an effect on our consumption patterns? And so would you guys like to see a couple panels about that right now? Okay, great. I threw this away, but it does, in fact, have the introduction of the first moderator. I hope you give a big round of applause for our first moderator. His name is Nate Halverson. He's a National Emmy Award-winning senior reporter, and he's a producer at the Center for Investigative Reporting, and he's the moderator for our first panel on what we eat. Please welcome Nate Halverson, everybody.
All right. Thank you, everybody. This is my first time ever moderating anything, so if I stink, it's a learning opportunity for all of us. I'm super stoked, though, by the folks that we have up here. Notaro, you know, I feel like, yeah, needs no introduction, but I'm going to give an introduction anyway. Grammy-nominated, Emmy-nominated,
SAG-nominated.
High school dropout, I read.
High school dropout.
Yeah, legendary stand-up comedian, and also a vegan.
I am.
Yeah, so super stoked to have her here with us. A little intimidated, I'm not gonna lie. And TK Pillan, who a lot of fans of people with engineering degrees from MIT I see out there. Co-founded Veggie Grill. We just saw, you know, a little spot documentary about the merger, and is now also a senior advisor at Beyond Meat. So, you know, obviously everyone knows Beyond. So thanks for joining us today. And we brought Thomas Kraft from Norway to just kind of give us an international feel up here.
Nailing it.
Yeah. His chocolate brand, VGAN, you've probably seen around both here and elsewhere. And, you know, he's one of the people that are not just making plant-based foods more available, but helping make delicious, tasty plant-based foods available in more places. So thanks for joining us up here.
Thank you.
So since we're with you, Thomas, I'll start with you. You know, you previously ran a dairy production company in Norway. You're not vegan. So why the pivot to plant-based chocolates?
Well, I basically saw that chocolate was made in a very exploited way, well, conventional chocolate, and I thought it should be possible to make really great tasting chocolate without harming planet, people, or animals. And I wanted to do that challenge because I saw most of these vegan sweets that existed came from the allergy side of the business, and they were not taste-driven. So most of the product tasted really, really bad. And I wanted to create something that
I believe you said during the prep, the warm-up, that most things tasted like shit.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I could say that. And normally I wouldn't, in that beginning, I thought I couldn't start a vegan chocolate company because I didn't really know how to make it better. But after quite a long time, we figured a way to create a product that tastes better. Because chocolate is indulgence. Chocolate is enjoyment. So if you can't create something that tastes good, what's the point? You're not going to buy it for just health or function. You need to get a product you really love. And as it is an indulgent product, you only eat your favorites. So that's what we try to do, create new favorites of products and make something that's super tasty and done in a good way. Because with chocolate, it's not only the animals that's the issue. It's also for the people. There's so much exploitation of workers and child labor in the cocoa industry. So going through that and finding the right cocoa farms, we've been investing a lot with our partners in education and creating a good livelihood for all the farmers to make sure that that side of it is good. And because of the dairy part in chocolate as a highly processed milk powder, it tastes the same regardless of the life of the cow. So then it's only a commodity and you buy the cheapest version, and that's a lot of the factory farming stuff comes in, which is not something you want to work with. So therefore, to choose a dairy part for it, it gets better. So, or a non-dairy part. I mean, we have a coconut cream and oat milk. So that's what we try.
Well, I can tell you, as someone who's reported around the world and has gone to the places where companies aren't doing it right and has seen the impact to human lives on the ground in those places, I appreciate to hear that there are folks out there that are pushing to do it right. Because I'll just tell you, not just as a journalist, but as a consumer, that's the kind of stuff I want to support.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues out there in a lot of these industries, and we just got to try to make things that are better, because otherwise we'll keep fucking up the planet, and we don't want to do that.
Yeah, and
as simple as that.
Yeah.
Sorry about language.
TK, I'll go to you next. I'm going to go even before the MIT degree. I'm going to ask you, your mother was a registered dietitian. What impact did she have on your journey into veganism and plant-based diet? I mean, how did you go from there to where you are now?
Sure. Well, she had an impact because she had a food as medicine philosophy, and she, while I was growing up, would treat patients in nursing homes and hospitals that were on medication and have them change their diet and be able to get off their medications. And that was pretty revolutionary in the 70s when I was growing up. So that always stuck with me. And then fast forward, I was an MIT .com guy, pretty successful .com in the mid-90s, sold it, a piece of it in 99, and sold completely in 2004, and had a blank slate, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And what I did was I kind of read a few books, right, and started looking at the lack of health and wellness in the country, and how do we solve that? And I knew it was through food, and so the question was, how could I start a business to help lead the country in the right direction? One thing led to another, and started really honing in on, hey, eating out is such a big piece of American culture. Can't go out and find delicious, healthy, convenient food. Can we solve that problem? Through that research, I became really enlightened about 100% plant-based eating. So I read a book called The China Study. I read another book called Diet for a New America. And those were really compelling books for me. Those are my stories, because we're here talking about telling stories. And those stories, based on a lot of facts, inspired me to transform my diet and then my career, right, to launch Veggie Grill, to inspire and empower plant-based eating, not only based on the health, but when I read Diet for a New America, I learned about factory farms and the immense environmental destruction they cause, the water, the land usage, just the treatment of those animals. It's like, what an impact you can have just by changing what you eat, but we got to show people how to make it fun, friendly, approachable. And so that's what got me here.
That's great. And, I think you brought up the idea of stories and the perspectives they give us. I mean, I think that really is the power of stories. It creates a framework for then how we process information and how we interact. And I was just, I think I'll speak for myself, I've come to the food is medicine, in probably the last 10 years. But you've had it for so long and seemingly before so many others. I mean, it was almost like you spoke this other language and how you were processing the world. What was it like growing up here and seeing food as medicine in a culture where so many people didn't see it that way?
Yeah, well, when I was growing up, I was trying to fit in. So I was eating a lot of chicken, a lot of poultry. My mother always told me to stay away from red meat, so I tried to do that, but I still ate burgers. So I was part of the American culture. Right, and I was playing sports. I was captain of my baseball and basketball team in high school.
Now you're
college.
just bragging.
Yeah, got to throw that in. But it just didn't seem even feasible to not eat meat, right? Because I was growing up in America, and that's what you do, right? But because of my mother's influence, when I started learning on my own, and I was 37 now, learning on my own, I was like, wow, okay, no, I get it. I get the fact that all you have to do is change your protein from animals to plants, and then you're cutting out the saturated fat, cutting out the cholesterol, cutting out, all of these negative inputs of factory farms, antibiotics, hormones, and that's gonna lead to great benefits. And it did for me. I lost 20 pounds. My cholesterol went from over 200 to under 140. And then when you just look at the math of the amount of land and water and that you need to grow all those crops for those cows, and then convert that to animal muscle, and what Beyond Meat had figured out how to do, they take those same plants and they retexturize it into the same form as animal muscle, add in healthier fats, and you have the same satisfaction of meat in a much healthier, tremendously more sustainable form, and it works. And they took off, and they had the most successful IPO in recent history because they had this solution that was just amazing. But guess what? The meat industry saw that and decided that's a huge threat.
Let me come back to that, because I'm curious about the cycles that you all have gone through. Tig, can I ask you, you performed one of the greatest stand-up routines of all time. I mean, I felt like that ricocheted around the world,
Thank you.
Yeah, and you did it, for those that don't know, right after being diagnosed with cancer, where you basically got up there and you said, "Hi, I have cancer." Mm-hmm. Can you take...
Funny, isn't it?
Very moving.
Thanks.
What's the path connecting that moment to the moment where you said, "I'm going all plants all the time"?
Well, I had, there was a little over a 4-month period of time where cancer was the last thing. I had bronchitis, then pneumonia. I took antibiotics, contracted a intestinal disease called C. diff. Not health related, but my mother tripped and died. My girlfriend and I split up, and then I was diagnosed with cancer. So yeah, I went on stage just like I had lost everything, and thought, I'll see if I can make this funny, and But anyway, I came through all of that physically, emotionally, and I was still standing, but I was also in a lot of pain. And I was struggling with eating and all sorts of issues. And people would mention, "Oh, you should try veganism." And so it was in the back of my mind, but I didn't fully get to it until I'd had enough of the struggles that I was having. And I was going on tour, comedy tour, and I thought, well, I'm going to be away from my regular life for 2 weeks. Maybe I'll spend those 2 weeks reading books, watching documentaries. My opening act is, he was a vegan and chef, and all we did was just drive around the country talking about vegetables and fruits and so I called my wife and I said, I think I'm going to try and become vegan. And she said, oh, well, I've always wanted to be vegan. And so I was like, well, that was easy. and I've never turned back. I mean, it made such a positive impact on my health and my mind. It opened me to so many other things in life. And
How long did it take you to get there where you're like, oh shit, like I feel different. I feel these doors opening.
I mean, it sounds insane, but I would say in the first week, there were just different levels of awakenings and shifts in my life. And it really, yeah, I don't know. It was pretty instantaneous.
And how long was that after you got up and did the routine?
That was in 2012. And again, I think I was so in my head, like, wow, I lived through all that physically and emotionally, and I'm lucky to be here. But I was like constantly struggling with issues and pain. And so I would say it 2017 is when I became vegan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I travel a lot for work, and it can really throw off routines, you know? And so how do you, I mean, you were traveling at the time, which is super surprising to like get a whole new habit while you're on the road, right? Where like routine is totally thrown off. How do you maintain that lifestyle choice and be able to consume like you want to consume when that's always getting broken up?
I have to say it is very easy, because what I tell people is you have to have your North Star, your reason that you're planting your feet in this shift, this massive change in your life. You have to be doing it for a reason that is going to drive you every single day. And I had my health and I wanted to not be in pain anymore. And plus I had 2 newborn babies that I wanted to be alive for, who are also vegan, and very proud. And so I think that having that drive, rather than being like, yeah, I'm going to try this new diet, or my friend's vegan, so I'm going to do it. You have to have something that is really pushing you in that direction. And so I have had that. And like I said before, it just kind of bleeds into other things that become a drive as well. And people are like, oh, but I live in this town, right? And I understand that there are definitely areas where it's harder to get fresh food and whatever. But if you're telling me that, that you don't have a vegan restaurant in your town, but you have a grocery store, I'm like, go to the grocery store. Yeah, there's food there. There is food there. There's also Happy Cow. But anyway, the app that can help you. But anyway, that's how I...
Awesome, thank you. And TK, I interrupted you. You were about to go down an avenue that I wanted to explore and make sure we had enough time to really dig in. And it's that I think when some of these products, Possible, Beyond, came out in the market, they got fairly favorable press. I mean, I know in 2017, I did something for our NPR radio show, Reveal, and but that you're in a mature market now. Narrative shift, they've changed. Can you kind of just tell me how things have shifted? What pushback you've gotten from competitors, and now how you might push back against that pushback?
Yep. So that's where we are today, in a big battle. Maybe I'll take a step back. Like 2006, we launched Veggie Grill. Back then, people didn't even use the term plant-based, and the merits of plant-based eating weren't being discussed. Right. So here we are, 20 years later, and plant-based had a slow, but then we're talking about stories. There's a couple big moments for the plant-based industry. One was the documentary Forks Over Knives. After that came out, we started seeing nice additional growth at Veggie Grill. Then Game Changers came out, growth. a couple other documentaries like What the Health and a few others. So people started getting the information, the knowledge, the opportunity to say, yeah, let me try that. And it started working, and the industry kept growing. And then, like you said, Beyond and Impossible really, created these processes, like modern, clean, simple processes, super effective to take plant protein. And, because a lot of people can't give up the taste of high, the satisfaction they get from high protein and fat, right? And that's what you get from meat. But that comes with a lot of saturated fat and cholesterol and other things that have linked to heart disease and cancer. And we need factory farms to produce as much meat as people want to eat. And it's ruining the planet. We don't have enough earth. But guess what? You can do it with plants now. And you can get that same satisfaction, much healthier, right? And they did it, and people loved it. And Veggie Grill went like this because people were like, wow, this tastes just like a burger, and it's healthier for me. And then 2019, Beyond Meat had the most successful IPO in recent history, and their sales going like this. And 2020, the meat industry said, you know what, we got a problem. And in 2021, they launched a campaign, a well-funded campaign, ultra-processed fake meat full of chemicals, unnatural, unhealthy. And that got implanted, and they ran it through Super Bowl ads, social media campaigns. They hired dietitians, hired doctors. They told an amazing story, and now that got implanted. Like, oh, well, I heard it's not good for me. I probably shouldn't be eating it. The whole sector went like this. That's why you see vegan restaurants closing. That's why you see, sales contracting. And we're in this moment of the last 2 years, 3 years have been contraction. But now we are just starting to fight back. Beyond Meat specifically, we reformulated all our products. They're already healthier than meat. But we said, you know what? To get past this, the first thing we have to do is just make sure there's nothing you can denigrate about the product. They replaced the coconut oil with avocado oil, which brought the saturated fat from 5 grams versus 8 grams in a regular burger to 2 grams, 75% less saturated fat. Shortened the ingredients list, brought the sodium down, said, you know what, we know they're better than meat, we know the studies show it, but let's just make it clear and simple that it's better. And so we've got those new products launched. If you take the time to look at the nutritionals, there's no doubt, right, and the studies are there. But now we got to tell the story, and that's hard, right, because we have this implanted story, and it's been talked about, ultra, and we have to say, no, it's a clean, simple process. We're just retexturizing plant protein, adding healthy fats, and that's it. Versus what happens in factory farms, you take 1,000 cows, put them in one place, then you need antibiotics to keep the disease from spreading, use hormones to get them to grow quicker, you use unnatural feed from all the GMO crops, and that is processed, and it's bad for you. And there's a reason why it's linked to heart disease, cancer, but we got to tell the story. I encourage everybody here to go to YouTube and look up Planting Change. It's a mini documentary we just launched to tell that story about everything we did, what the meat industry did, how we're coming back, and we need everybody's help because we're fighting a big, huge, entrenched competitor that just does not want the world to have a healthier, more sustainable option because it's going to hurt their, just like the tobacco industry, it's not in their interest. And they've got a lot of power. And we need groups like this that care to start looking at the facts and spreading the truth.
Thank you. Thomas, a question for you now. What do you see as the primary drivers that are pushing people to buy plant-based, even if they're not vegan?
Well, for us in the indulgence side, it's taste first, because there's been so much product out there that hasn't really been too tasty. And people have a lot of skepticism still to try products. Whenever we do sampling, because we focus on white chocolates and milk chocolates, 90% of everything that's been sold has been dark chocolates. All dark chocolates are naturally vegan. So there's a lot of them. It's very good. And people love it. But when most people grew up as kids, what you remember, what you had, what you're emotional about was the chocolate you got from your grandma or with your parents or anything like that. And that was mostly white and milk chocolates. So you have all these emotional connections to food that you really enjoy and you have these positive moments. And for us, it's been about creating great tasting products that fit those moments. So when we do tastings and people actually try our white chocolate, they're like, I've never tried a white chocolate like this. It's the first time they'll come to me and say, I don't like white chocolate. I don't like white chocolate, I don't like matcha, I don't like raspberry, I don't like whatever. And we give them a white chocolate with freezer raspberries and they love it because they've never had a product like that before. So it's about what we all said, what me and TK said here, we try to make better products because in the end, if people don't like how these products taste, they're not going to buy it. So that's a very important driver to get this to be really tasty. But we also need all of you guys out there to really try the products. So what we aim to do is to put the products into conventional stores, not just natural stores and specialty stores, but put it into conventional stores, put it in colleges, put it where people are and are willing to try new products and just get it out there because distribution is a big hurdle to get it available because in retail, same with the meat industry, in retail for other categories, the big companies, they control the shelves. So take a company like Mondelez. They're big guys. They buy up companies. They bought Who Chocolate not too long ago, or 4 or 5 years ago, which was the leader in plant-based chocolate in the US. And what did they do? After a couple of years, they launched a dairy milk product within that category because they have no incentive to move the category to plant-based. So they really don't have any incentive to make a better product than what they already have. So it's they want to keep status quo. So it's for us to create great products and for all of you people out there to try the products, buy them. If you like it, recommend it to friends and make these small changes because that's what we all need. We can't make everyone vegans overnight, but if we get people to try a vegan product, whether it's Beyond Meat or chocolate or whatever, just do that and recommend it to other people and see that this is actually a good product that people like, then we have a way to go forward.
Thanks. Now, Tig, you basically did go vegan overnight.
I did. And you can too.
What I love about comedy is that you all take these everyday things and you put them under the microscope and you kind of find the absurdity or the tragedy or the laughs within those things. So was there something about going all plant-based all of the time that people don't talk about? I mean, was there a transition there where you could be like, this is like hilarious, or no one talks about this, or?
I mean, I don't know about hilarious, but feel free to laugh as I tell you this. No, I feel like being prepared to go plant-based is so important. And I think that I think that making sure that I'm sure that I'm sure there's books and Googling that you can do to just kind of lay the groundwork for that transition into eating that way, to show you like, here are easy meals that you can make for breakfast. Here are easy meals you can make for lunch. Here are easy meals you can make for dinner. Whether you're great in the kitchen or whether you cook or not, just to make sure you have an understanding, because people get so overwhelmed when they make that shift that they're like, oh my gosh, how do I possibly make, this is so difficult, and it just becomes this unsolvable equation becoming plant-based. And so what I would suggest to people is to just do that research. Even if you're living off of a peanut butter and banana sandwich, there's the comedy. They're dying laughing. But even if that's what you're living off the first couple of days, but not really, but just to make sure that
Beyond Burger.
What's that?
Beyond Burger. A
Beyond Burger, exactly. A Beyond Burger with chocolate on top.
Yeah.
And
while watching a documentary.
yes. And reading the China study. But I do think if you aren't vegan and you do want to make that shift, to just make sure you have a list of things for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, whatever, so that the transition is easier, and then you can start to learn a little more, more than peanut butter and banana sandwich. I say that because my kids love those. I mean, who doesn't? There's some people that don't.
Okay, so I have so many more questions. We have that thing is scary. It's counting down 2 minutes, which means we have 2 minutes left.
We're going to implode.
Yeah, we're going to get yelled at. So let me ask you one final question. I think, just in terms of stories, when you've gone vegan, you meet a lot of other people that aren't vegan. I think sometimes vegans get a rap of being like better than thou, especially at the dinner table. And yet, I know as an investigative journalist, I know that eating all plant-based is probably the best thing you can do for climate change. It's probably the best thing you can do to lower your water consumption. It's probably the best thing you can do to probably lower conflicts around the world as more and more conflicts are happening around resources. So how do you convey the story of veganism without being better than thou?
I am better than thou.
I knew it.
No, I do think, it's so funny because I have a podcast called Handsome, check it out. But one of my co-hosts, is very into eating ice cream and treats and biscuits and all of that, which is great. There's also those vegan options. And the way I approach, I don't feel holier than thou. I really am somebody where you do you, but if you want to talk about it or you want any information, careful what you wish for, because I will talk you right out of the room.
I saw you on Stephen Colbert and you brought your special vegan sauce.
Yes, yeah. It wasn't sauce, it was powder, but yes.
Oh, that's right, it was. Yeah,
yes.
It had a very spicy name.
Yeah.
What was it?
Well, I had to come up with a name because people were like, what is this? I made it for my kids when they were little, just to make sure they had all the nutrients they needed, until I really realized, oh, they're good, but it was still a backup plan for extra nutrition. And then I started taking it to friends' parties, and they're like, what is this? And I was like, oh, it's dyke dust. I'm still workshopping the name, but that's what it is right now. But anyway, I think the way to go about it is to just remain open and not feel or present that you are better than anybody, and to allow the connection and the discussion, so that people will be more open to hearing your ideas and your reasons for changing your diet. And but I'm kind of not remembering what you asked me.
Well, it was the perfect finale for our zero timed out panel.
To end on dyke dust?
Yeah.
Who here would buy dyke dust? All right.
2 entrepreneurs right up here. I mean, there's your
Chocolate
We'll
with
work
it.
on the name.
Yeah. What's that? We'll work on the name.
yeah. Well, thanks
good, isn't
everybody, and thank you all so much. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Grab your water bottle, remember?
Well, I got this one. I guess I'll leave it for the next person just in case.
Hello, everybody. I'm back. Give it up for that amazing panel. Vegans, they can be fun to talk to. Isn't that incredible? Once again, I'm Adam Conover. We're back with another amazing panel for you. I'd like to introduce your panelists really quickly. We have, first we have Maren Costa. She's a climate justice leader, workers' rights advocate, and tech organizer known for challenging corporate power to drive systemic change. Give it for Maren Costa, please. We have Aisha Becker-Burrowes. Aisha Becker-Burrowes is the co-founder and co-executive director of Feminist and a social entrepreneur and impact consultant with a focus on racial equity and gender justice. Give it up for Aisha, please. And on the end, we have Evlondo Cooper, a senior researcher for Media Matters for America's Climate and Energy Program. One time for Evlondo, please. So look, we're up here to talk about all the ways that we can combat consumerism and the ways that we've been subconsciously impacted by it, by the algorithm, by the tactics used by these media corporations to make buying easier and more convenient. I'd like to start with an icebreaker. Like, what's the time that you have been influenced to consume a piece of media or a product that perhaps you shouldn't? I'll start. I will buy anything the Wirecutter tells me to, and they told me recently that Conan O'Brien wears a particular pair of pants, and I said, I gotta have those pants, and I got them, and they were full of polyester, and man does not have taste in fabrics. Don't tell him that. I hope Tig didn't hear that. I'm sure they know each other. How about you guys? I'm just curious. What's any embarrassing purchases recently?
I just try to stay away from Instagram or whatever because they have my number, you know? It's like the algorithm is so tuned and I look there, oh wow, I didn't even know that existed. I guess I need one. But I just don't. Like, I just don't.
I just got a tooth gem today.
Hell yeah! And why did you get that tooth gem?
You know, it's funny because it actually wasn't like an algorithmic push. I don't know. My sister was like, "Let's get tooth gems," and I was like, "Sure, let's do it." But I did do like a kind of like my own research study where I was like scrolling on Instagram for a minute and kind of timed myself just to see how many like suggested for you pieces of content that I would get. And in like 60 seconds, I got 25.
Wow.
And only one of them was useful to me. As someone that's planning to go to Sri Lanka this summer, there was like, you know, here's what to do when you go to Sri Lanka. And I was like, great. But yeah.
And none were tooth gems, though.
None were tooth gems.
So you're a free thinker. Good for
I'm
you.
a free thinker.
You have anything?
Yeah, my memory predates the current algorithms. I remember when I was a kid, I might be dating myself, but when I was in junior high, I remember this. I wanted a pair of used jeans, and not used in the sense that they were secondhand or thrift. It was a clothing brand that intentionally made ripped and distressed and torn up jeans. But I really wanted a pair, and so I remember going to my parents and asking them to give me $100 to buy a pair of jeans that they considered torn or worn out, and just looking at me flabbergasted. So, like many of you, I've been, caught in the consumerist mindset for a long time, but I'm trying to do a little bit better.
Yeah, well, as we all are, and none of us are perfect at it. But Maren, let's start with you. Your work. Oh, no problem. Of course, your work was a part of a documentary called "Buy Now: The Shopping Conspiracy." Oh, we got some fans. So from an insider perspective, like, what are some of the ways that corporations and Amazon specifically have influenced consumer behaviors in exactly the way Evlondo's talking about?
Yeah, just in every possible way that they can. I mean, Jeff Bezos started Amazon to ensure that he had enough, the equivalent budget of NASA, so that he could build rocket ships. I mean, he just cares about making money and driving the price down, which of course creates all the labor abuses, and bringing, he had this formula. It was price, selection, convenience, and that was just the mantra: price, selection, convenience. So you're constantly driving prices down, driving convenience up, and getting more and more selection. So you have things coming from China now and being shipped all the way when you could get the same thing. It's just, and then on the website, of course, there was just anything you want to sell, you make bigger and bolder, and anything the customer's trying to like find customer service or try to return something or try to cancel a program is like in the tiny, gray type. I mean, it's just, and the thing that, people can say, okay, but yeah, grocery stores have been doing this forever. But grocery stores aren't in your bedroom with you at night. You know, once it became on our mobile phones, it was just, I mean, that it just accelerated consumerism, and we are off the chain. You know, we have enough clothing on the planet to clothe the next 6 generations. And yet we are buying 60% more and keeping it half as long, 60% more than 15 years ago, you know. Children in industrialized nations see 30,000 ads a year, which is like 82 per day. You know, we are pushing consumption to our own detriment very successfully on every possible channel.
Yeah. So Aisha, you mentioned social media and Instagram. So yeah, I mean, social media can obviously be used to push that kind of consumerism, but can it be used to push the opposite message? To my point in my intro, like, can it actually be used for something better?
I mean, yes, absolutely. I think like yes and no. I'm a Libra, so I have 2 answers to the same question. Right, which is like, I think for context, I started my career working in like big media, so like doing kind of social impact work, so Netflix, Paramount, like Essence magazine, and I always really believed in this like media has the power to shift public consciousness, and I still believe that to this day. And so I think you look at movements and movement work, right? I sort of like co-founded Feminist, which is primarily online, 6 million followers on social media, and realized that there's like, what would it look like to kind of create a media infrastructure for movements? And that's not to say that the algorithm isn't trying very hard to censor us and censor the work that we do. And so, you also have to build off platform, which we do as well. But yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the Black Lives Matter movement or Me Too or hashtag No Dakota Access Pipeline, right? Like there's all these examples where people are really mobilizing online because it takes away these sort of like traditional gatekeepers, right? And you just have direct to your phone, anyone has it, anyone has access, you don't need to wait to be on, I don't know, CNN or Fox News, but you have the access to be able to do it directly and to make that direct impact. So I think yes.
Except
no.
there is an algorithm mediating
yes.
it, and the algorithm is designed by, not the activists, is designed by the Jeff Bezoses of the world. Evlondo, you've conducted a lot of research on how certain parties are able to, really influence conversations by leveraging social media algorithms, specifically that the right wing is currently dominating, especially online. I mean, tell us about that. Do they have the sort of anti-climate change, us doing something about climate change forces, for instance, have an advantage in online media?
Yeah, it's yes, but it's very complicated. I mean, you're right that public consumption of media drives the understanding of climate change, of who's driving the crisis, the solutions that are viable to mitigate its worst impacts. I mean, even whether we consider climate change a collective or individual problem. But what we're seeing now is that journalists are less in control of the narrative, and it's moving more to online spaces, which are being dominated by people on the right.
Oh, check out this graphic back here. This is one of yours, right?
Well, so according to a recent study by my colleague, Kayla Gorgady, 9 out of the top 10 shows with the most following are lean right. This includes podcasts, YouTube channels, other streaming services. They account for 480 million followers, which is 5 times more than left-leaning shows. And what this means is that we have a asymmetric media landscape where climate misinformation is being amplified because these shows bill themselves as cultural shows or sports shows or entertainment shows, but they have politicians on, they have ideologically aligned guests on, and these shows have become hubs for climate misinformation. So that's what we're seeing in our research.
And where does this pattern come from? Like, why is it that these red circles are larger and there's more of them?
Well, these shows are emotionally resonant for a lot of folks. They're optimized by the algorithm. And to your point earlier in your introduction, a lot of this is because traditional media does not actually do a great job discussing climate change, climate solutions, or discussing and centering climate justice and environmental justice. They just don't do a good job. So that vacuum is filled by people on the right, and that's what's created this asymmetric media landscape. So in order to improve this, we actually do need a media that prioritizes climate change, that talks about solutions, that names the people that are driving the crisis, and centers the voices of those that are most vulnerable.
Yeah. And let me just say, we need people who care to pay for it. Like the forces who, thank you, the forces who don't want us to do anything about climate change, the billionaires on that side have poured millions and millions of dollars into these people, whereas folks on the left said, oh, well, NBC will do that for us, which A, they didn't, and B, what's NBC? Does anybody, like Joe Rogan is bigger than, any show you want to mention on broadcast now.
Yeah, and just briefly, this is a successful culmination of a decades-long billion-dollar campaign by the fossil fuel industry. A lot of you may not remember this, but in the 80s, I was young then, but there was a bipartisan consensus on global warming. It was Republican pollster Frank Luntz who successfully rebranded global warming as climate change because it was less threatening, less urgent. The climate's always changing. So this ecosystem is a decades-long process on the right, and unfortunately, it's reaping a lot of spoils for people on that side.
Can I just add one little statistic here? The Oxfam report, which is sort of like a big research, group out of London, I think, in January 2024, identified mis and disinformation as the second largest existential threat after climate change.
Yeah, and so, Aisha, back to your point about, there's no gatekeepers. Anybody can say anything, but also that means anybody can say anything, right? And money talks, and certain views are less favored by the algorithm. So coming back to concretely how we, fight back against this trend, like how do we do it?
I mean, I don't know. No, truthfully, I think we're trying, right? Like, I think a couple of things that you're pointing out, right, and that I think about incessantly is this red pill effect, right? Which is like kind of you might be consuming kind of sports media, new, whatever, and then suddenly you're funneled into like Joe Rogan, and the next thing you know, it's like some MAGA extremist sort of content, right? That's also happening on the gender equity side as well, right? There's the pink pill effect, which is like you might be consuming one thing, and the next thing you know, you're kind of in this like Maha deep like algorithm, or like trad wife content, right? And so the algorithm like really is a scary place, and so I think while I understand the ability to really mobilize on social media, I think we always include calls to action, right? Like think about your audiences, not just as audiences, but as like potential advocates, right? That can take action around something. I think that that's the difference between the sort of like journalistic integrity, right? Which is like you are just sharing information and allow people to do something with it. I think with the work that social media can do, like you can actually kind of give an opinion, right? And say like, here's the headline, but also like here's how you can take action. And I think there's a lot of like hope that can happen kind of around that. So I don't know, but it's hard. I think there's like, you're on Instagram or on TikTok, it's only a minute. How can you have a nuanced conversation if you can only post like a 1-minute reel? And so I think for us, it's understanding that it's really like building a multi-channel ecosystem. It's always pointing people to the books that they need to read or to our website to learn more and have more nuanced conversation. Come to our events, let's community build together, right? There's so many different, read our newsletter, like there's so many other access points, but truthfully, social media is like the first stop, and then in like a long line of engagement that hopefully inspires people to get offline and take action.
A wonderful answer. This is a question for all three of you. When you're talking about this stuff, I think for those of us on the side that cares about these issues, when we do content about it on the internet, we tend to really seem like we care, and it's for people who care, right? It's like there's a big problem in the world, and you need to know about it, and blah 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 blah, right? And something I think about a lot of my work as a comic is there's a limited number of people who care at any particular day. Even most of the time, I'm not really worrying about climate change. I'm just trying to relax. And so when you spoke about like the Maha or the red pill slide, that's it starts with a big tent, right? It starts with just someone learning about sports or beauty tips or whatever it may be. And so in your own work as communicators, I'm curious, have you been able to find ways to, broaden the appeal of this messaging so it's not just vegetables all the time,
I think one thing is we need to stop looking left and right, and we need to start looking up and down. This is the 0.001% against the rest of all the rest of us, and I think that's a big tent message. That they're always trying to say, look at that group. They don't look like us. They don't talk like us. They don't have our same values. Let's kick them out. Well, look at the group. Look at that group. They're the ones that have the least in common with any of us, and they are. I talk about the tech oligarchy, really, because if you look at the top 10 richest people in the world right now, 8 out of 10 of them are from big tech. So we have this massive concentration of power, and we need to build a countervailing force. Right now, we don't have one. That countervailing force is the 99.99%, and it doesn't take that many. It only takes 10% of a population to get engaged, get visible, get loud, to make radical systemic change, which is exactly what we need.
Yeah, I think for us, as communicators, we have a brand that's called Feminist, right? Feminism in and of itself has, I feel like, had so much, there's so much kind of tension and contention just around it, and it was sort of not a cool thing. And I feel like for us, it's just about literally just kind of feminism is for everybody, right? Gender equity is gonna get us all free, right? Gender equity is a climate justice issue, it's an environmental justice issue. And so I think we did become a nonprofit last year, and now that means that we're having lots of funder conversations, right? And all of these people with a lot of opinions. And I think for around this, seeing this research and being okay, we need to we need more cooking shows, we need more whatever, right? And I think for me, there's a piece of me that's yeah, sure, but it's also let's just double down on really talking about the issues. And honestly, if it doesn't reach those folks, it's okay. But we're going to be mobilizing the people at the dinner table that are the most inspired by this thing or want to take action around a certain thing, and they're now bringing it to their dinner tables and to their friends and their families. And they may be, the person like me that's not the most fun person at a dinner party because I'm going to be bringing up something that you probably don't want to hear, But it's important. I think it's really important to keep doubling down on the importance of this messaging. So yeah, and don't water it down.
Yeah, this is such an important question and discussion. I want to echo what you both said, because when I'm communicating about my work and talking to folks, I think we can pierce some of these epistemic news media bubbles. I think we have to show up with authenticity, with honesty. We have to meet people where they are. And it's important because audiences aren't a monolith, even those giant red bubbles. The Yale Climate Connection did a study that was built on our asymmetry study that found that 8 of the top 10 online shows have spread climate misinformation or disinformation. A lot of it around climate action, trying to rebrand it as government overreach. But the story doesn't stop there, because also polling has shown that increasing majorities of Americans across the ideological spectrum are concerned about extreme weather impacts. They want to see government action. Even we're seeing even majorities of people saying that they would prefer to prioritize the environment over the economy. I think these are persuadable folks. I think we need to build a media apparatus that prioritizes the voices of storytellers who have credibility within their communities. We're talking about Black, Hispanic, Indigenous folks who can speak past differences with clarity. And it also needs to be resourced. The only way to combat these bubbles, to combat this asymmetry, is through strategy, infrastructure, and investment.
That's a wonderful answer. We have about 10 minutes left. I want to bring it back to specifically capitalist control of media, both social media and traditional media, and this is the Hollywood Climate Summit, so let's bring Hollywood in. Maren, you mentioned Amazon earlier. Amazon happens to be one of the largest employers in this town now, right, in Hollywood. And if you look at the other companies that employ, the folks I know in comedy or writing, et cetera, they're from similar companies. those companies tend to make decisions based on the bottom line of what they want us to buy. And there's really glaring examples of this. There's a really wonderful documentary that came out last year called Union that was about the Amazon labor union. The union started by Chris Smalls at the Staten Island warehouse. National news story. He became a celebrity. This is a documentary that had exclusive access. They'd been filming with them the entire time. I've seen the documentary. It's an incredible piece of work. Should have easily sold to one of any of, half a dozen streamers. They couldn't find a single buyer. Nobody wanted to touch it because they were either part of Amazon or they were afraid of Amazon, or they just, weren't going to do a labor story. And so you see a lack of willingness to touch any story like this from people who know better, quite honestly. And so when we're trying to get the message out there, how do we do so under those conditions when, unfortunately, we live in a capitalist society and media ecosystem?
I mean, honestly, this is where it does start to get really scary. We are in unprecedented times, and this, taking over of the media is step one in dystopia, basically. And you see things like this, even the Buy Now film, which came out on Netflix. Thank you, Netflix, for actually touching that one. Some of the reviewers were saying, they were saying, watch it fast because I have a feeling they're gonna pull it because it's too anti-corporations, and I think maybe Netflix was motivated to do it because they wanted to poke at Amazon a little bit, I don't know, but it is getting harder and harder to get the message out there, and the longer we wait to get loud, the harder it's going to be. And Hollywood, actually, now that we've lost big tech, who used to have big pockets and was actually on the left, now we need, some of the movie stars, so whoever has your connections, I don't know, go talk to your friends. We need people with big money to step up and step in, and then we need, all of us, right behind them.
I think I kind of have a pessimistic answer to this question.
I love that.
Because I left traditional media for a reason. I think that there was so much that you can do with storytelling. I was doing a lot of narrative change storytelling, bringing a lot of partners that are actually here, to our scripts and to our film projects and things that had kind of an impact storyline. But I think especially in 2020, right? The racial uprisings, we're living through the pandemic, and then when Dobbs fell, I was like, we need more. We are in absolutely dire times, and just the sheer amount, I think I very much felt kind of like a gatekeeper of partnerships, or kind of started to feel like a gatekeeper of change in a lot of ways, or yes, we can say this, but we can't say this, and that just got hard for me. And so I think that we need more risk takers in those institutions. We need more funders that are willing to kind of fund these projects within and outside of the walls of sort of, these traditional platforms. And we need to do it now, and we need to do it urgently.
Yeah. I'm not an expert on Hollywood, except loving the movies and entertainment that comes out of here. But speaking to the funding piece, I can speak and say that, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are groups out there in communities across this country that can do the work. They just need funding and resources. A lot of times, though, people with deep pockets like to parachute into these communities and tell them how to do the work they've already been doing. So, I understand there's a climate of fear, but if you can devote any kind of resources or attention, there are groups already out there putting it on the line every day that are doing the work, and all they need is to be better resourced and some amplification of their work. And I think we can, like you said, it's the 99% against the 0.1%. And I think we can actually make some positive changes by just funding the groups that are already out there doing the work. So,
I've never heard more people quietly go, mm-hmm, than during that last answer from Evlondo. Yeah, over and over. And if you're wondering, how do I find one of those communities? Look for someone who went, mm-hmm, and they might know. If you're wanting to fund somebody. How do we have nuanced discussions about these issues when, the need is so great, There's a lot of people who communicate about these issues poorly, right, or who spread misinformation, even when how we agree with, we're on the same side, but they're, the message is simplistic, or we need to adjust, especially when, the algorithm prioritizes quick engagement and really simple messaging.
I'll say really quick, start local, start where you are. Talk to your coworkers. Go to a school board meeting, go to a city council meeting. We need to be talking to people face to face that are in our own communities. And that's where we start. We build these communities of resistance, resilience, and ideally, eventually, regeneration. And that's what we're going to need. So just start building community, talk about the real stuff together, and just, do it now. Do it urgently.
Absolutely +1 that. I think that it's, two things, right? Like I'm talking from the lens of social media right now, right? Like you have to study the algorithm, unfortunately, right? And so in some ways think about yourself as like a hacker of the algorithm, right? Like it's not about virality, it's about values. That's the first thing, right? But it's about understanding, okay, what's the hook? You want people to understand the Black maternal mortality health crisis and how that's connected to economic, whatever. And so there's a lot of nuance there, right? And it's important to understand the hook and then drive people in, right? Sometimes it's about, we spend a lot of time on design. How do things look, right? Can we make it look engaging? Really be a student of the algorithm. And then also tap your community, right? We have there's these amazing little community, social media communities of folks being hey, this isn't getting, this is getting censored. Do you mind boosting this? Do you mind collaborating on this? Do you mind amplifying this in your stories or whatever it is, right? So that's the kind of online piece. And then I think the offline piece is exactly what I was saying before, is just understand that these platforms have their limits. And so try to reach people and meet them where they are in all the different places that they are, and do it in community and in person, and in places where you can have those more nuanced conversations. But if people are, their first eyeballs are with social media, use that as the hook and then keep people coming along.
Evlondo, what do you have?
I just add briefly, I love that answer. We think about climate resiliency in terms of policy. We should also think about climate resilient storytelling. The algorithm is going to do what it does. It's going to flatten. It's going to decontextualize. But I think if we can begin building in this kind of resilient storytelling that can retain its meaning in kind of short formats, but also invite people to engage deeper when and if they're able, I think that's another way to kind of combat these algorithms. And also building decentralized platforms, I think, is key. That's it.
Well, we only have a couple seconds left. Evlondo, I know that your organization particularly is under attack from a lot of forces that we are all collectively fighting against here. So how can people, support the work that folks like you are doing?
Yeah, of course you can donate to the organization, but also share our work, help amplify it. I have amazing colleagues who do amazing work. You got folks that are, I'm lucky I deal in the climate denial space, which is bad enough, but some of these media ecosystems are disgusting, and they're day in and day out in these ecosystems trying to bring accountability to these folks that are spreading misinformation, disinformation, and even worse, hatred. So feel free to support directly or just share our work with your friends, neighbors, and community.
Aisha and Maren, do you have any final calls to action or things people should check out?
Yeah, I love telling people, as a nerd of media, right? I love telling people to keep watching the shows. Even if I'm someone that really loves reality TV as an escapist thing for myself, because I'm constantly consuming the news and media, and it can just be, I need the escape. So I'm not always trying to watch a really heavy documentary about something, right? But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't, and I still do. But also sometimes these I don't know, Netflix and the streaming platforms, they're watching what you're consuming, right? And so it's important to cook your dinner and keep the show on mute if you need, whatever it is, but or even, on Instagram similarly, right? if there's maybe a piece of social justice content or climate justice content that you're I've watched this once, but I want to watch it 5 times because I want to support this. People, I think there's a way to think about your consumption, your media consumption, in a really conscious way. So, yeah.
That's really wonderful. And do that with all of my shows. Thank you.
I would just say, remember that we are being intentionally divided by the algorithms. We are being polarized and divided, and we are not that different from each other. We all want to take care of our families. We all want to be safe. We all want to have like healthcare and education and, you know, a livable future on a green planet. You know, like we got to get back to remembering that we're all in this lifeboat, literal lifeboat in space together. And, you know, we got to lean in.
Thank you for that wonderful answer. One more time for our amazing panel, everybody. And thank you all so much for being here. Oh, thank you. Can we get that?